There's a specific kind of silence that follows the end of a marriage. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of erasure. One day you're someone's forever. The next, you're sorting through who gets the couch, who keeps the dog, who takes the photos from that trip to Portugal where you both swore nothing could ever touch what you had. And then, suddenly, you're alone in an apartment that feels too big or too small, and you realize you don't know who you are anymore. Some people walk away from divorce like they're shedding an old skin. They post gym selfies within a month. They're on dating apps by week 3. They tell their friends, "I feel so free," and maybe they even mean it. But then there are the others, the ones who don't just grieve the relationship, they collapse. They stop eating, or they eat too much. They can't sleep, or they sleep 14 hours a day. They sit in their car in parking lots and forget why they drove there. They look in the mirror and see a stranger. And the worst part? They feel ashamed for falling apart, as if resilience is something everyone else was born with and they somehow missed. If that's you, I need you to hear this. You're not weak. You're not broken beyond repair. You're experiencing something psychology rarely talks about in the way it should: identity dissolution. And it's one of the most destabilizing things a human being can go through. Because here's what most people don't understand about divorce. It's not just the loss of a partner, it's the loss of a language, the inside jokes that now mean nothing, the routines that shaped your days, the Saturday morning coffee runs, the way you'd both cook dinner in a specific rhythm, the unspoken agreement about who handled what. All of that, gone. And with it, the version of you that existed inside that structure, the we version. The person who was someone's husband, someone's wife, someone's other half. That person is dead, and no one taught you how to grieve someone who's you. Let's go deeper, because the people who fall apart after divorce aren't usually the ones who were blindsided. That's what's so cruel about this. Often, they're the ones who saw it coming. They're the ones who spent years trying to fix it, who bent themselves into shapes they didn't recognize, who swallowed their needs so small they forgot they had any. They're the ones who became experts at reading their partner's moods, at managing tension, at being just enough, but never too much. And when the marriage finally ends, they don't just lose their partner, they lose their purpose. Psychologists call this role engulfment. It's what happens when your identity becomes so fused with your role in a relationship that you can't separate who you are from what you do for someone else. And it doesn't start with marriage, it starts way earlier, usually in childhood. Think about this. If you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where you had to be the good kid, the helpful one, the one who didn't make waves, you learned early that your value was tied to your usefulness. You learned that being needed was the same as being loved. So when you got into a relationship, you didn't just fall in love, you found a job, a purpose. You became the caretaker, the peacekeeper, the one who held everything together. And it felt good, didn't it? Because finally, you were essential. Finally, you mattered. But here's the trap. When your identity is built on being needed, what happens when you're not needed anymore? You don't just lose the relationship, you lose the scaffolding that was holding you up. You lose the reason you got out of bed. And suddenly, you're face to face with a question you've been avoiding your entire life. Who am I when I'm not useful to someone? That's the abyss. That's why some people fall apart, not because they loved too hard, but because they disappeared too completely. And here's where it gets even more layered. There's a concept in psychology called ambiguous loss. It's a term coined by Dr. Pauline Boss to describe a loss that has no closure, no clear endpoint. It was originally used to talk about families of missing persons or loved ones with dementia, people who are physically gone but not officially dead, or physically present but psychologically absent. But ambiguous loss applies to divorce in a way that's rarely discussed. Because after divorce, your ex-partner is still alive. They're still out there, maybe even thriving. You might see them on social media, living a life that looks better than the one they had with you. Maybe they've moved on to someone new. Maybe they're happy. And you're left holding this impossible grief, mourning someone who didn't die, who chose to leave, who is still breathing and laughing and existing somewhere in the world without you. There's no funeral, no collective mourning. just you, alone, trying to explain to people why you can't move on from someone who's already moved on from you. And society doesn't help. People give you 6 months, maybe a year if you were married a long time, and then the questions start. Are you dating yet? Have you tried therapy? You seem stuck, as if healing has a deadline, as if grief can be scheduled, as if you can just decide one day to stop missing the person you built your entire adult life around. But let's talk about what's really happening in your brain when you fall apart after divorce, because this isn't just emotional, it's neurological. When you're in a long-term relationship, your brain becomes wired to that person. You develop what neuroscientists call shared neural representations. Essentially, your brain starts to process your partner's presence as part of your own sense of self. Their routines become your routines. Their preferences influence your preferences. You start to regulate your emotions based on their rhythms. And over time, your nervous system becomes co-regulated with theirs. You calm down when they're calm. You tense up when they're stressed. You exist in a constant feedback loop. So when that person leaves, it's not just an emotional rupture, it's a neurological withdrawal. Your brain is literally looking for the other half of its regulatory system. The routines you built together, they were neural pathways, and now those pathways lead to nothing. Every morning you wake up and reach for someone who isn't there. Every evening you come home to silence when your body is expecting a voice. Your brain is in crisis mode, desperately trying to make sense of a world that no longer matches its internal map. And this is why you feel crazy. This is why you can't concentrate. This is why you forget things, why you feel foggy, why you make impulsive decisions or shut down completely. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and planning, is offline. Your amygdala, the fear center, is running the show. You're in survival mode, and survival mode doesn't care about your career, your social life, or whether you're being productive. It only cares about one thing: finding safety. And safety to your nervous system was that person, the person who's gone.
But here's what makes it worse. If you're someone who falls apart after divorce, chances are this isn't your first experience with loss. This is probably a reopening of an old wound. A wound from childhood. A wound from the first time you learned that love could disappear. Maybe you had a parent who was emotionally unavailable. Maybe you were the kid who had to grow up too fast, who took care of siblings or a depressed parent, who learned that your job was to keep everyone else okay. Maybe you experienced what psychologists call micro-traumas. Not one big catastrophic event, but 1,000 small moments where you felt unseen, unheard, not quite enough. And you adapted. You became hypervigilant. You learned to read people. You learned to shrink. You learned that love was something you had to earn. And then you met your ex. And for a while, it worked. Because you were so good at being what they needed. You were so good at anticipating, at adjusting, at making yourself easy to love. But the problem with being easy to love is that you disappear in the process. You become a mirror. And mirrors don't have needs. Mirrors don't have boundaries. Mirrors just reflect. So when the marriage ended, it wasn't just the loss of your partner. It was the loss of the only identity you'd ever known. The helper, the fixer, the one who holds it all together. And now, in the wreckage, you're left with the terrifying question you've spent your whole life avoiding. What if I don't know how to exist for myself?
That's the core of it. That's the wound beneath the wound. And once you see it, everything starts to make sense. The reason you can't just move on isn't because you're weak. It's because you've never actually practiced being a whole person outside of being needed by someone else. You've spent so long performing the role of partner, of caretaker, of the one who adjusts, that you never built a foundation for yourself. And now the structure is gone and you're standing in the rubble, realizing there was never solid ground beneath you to begin with. But here's the shift. Here's the part that changes everything. What if falling apart wasn't a failure? What if it was the beginning? Because the truth is, you can't rebuild on a broken foundation. You have to let it crumble first. You have to let yourself fall apart so you can see what was never really yours to begin with. The identity you borrowed, the worth you outsourced, the love you performed for instead of received. All of it has to go. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it feels like dying. But it's also the only way to find out who you actually are when no one is watching, when no one needs you, when there's no role to play. This is what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. Not the idea that trauma makes you stronger. That's a myth that causes more harm than healing. But the idea that after trauma, if you allow yourself to actually process it, you can rebuild in a way that's more aligned with who you really are. You can create boundaries you never had. You can discover needs you buried. You can learn that your value isn't tied to how well you disappear into someone else's life.
And practically, this means you have to do something most people avoid. You have to sit with yourself. Not distract, not numb, not immediately jump into a new relationship or throw yourself into work or pretend you're fine. You have to actually feel the emptiness. Because that emptiness, it's not a void, it's space. Space for you to ask yourself questions you've never had the room to ask. What do I actually like? What do I want my life to look like? What would I do if no one was watching? If no one had an opinion? If I didn't have to be anything for anyone? Start small. Cook a meal just for yourself and make it exactly how you want it. Not how your ex liked it, not how you think you should eat, just what you want. Sit in a coffee shop alone and don't bring a book or your phone. Just sit. Notice what comes up. The discomfort, the sadness, the strange relief. Go to a movie by yourself. Take a walk without a destination. Relearn what it feels like to exist without performing.
And here's the other part no one talks about. Forgive yourself for how long this is taking. Forgive yourself for the days you can't get out of bed. Forgive yourself for texting your ex when you swore you wouldn't. Forgive yourself for not being the person who bounces back in 3 months with a new haircut and a motivational Instagram post. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel like you're making progress, and then something small, a song, a smell, the way the light hits a room, will knock you back to square one. That's not failure, that's grief. And grief doesn't follow a schedule. You're not falling apart. You're unbecoming. You're shedding the skin of someone you were never meant to be. And on the other side of this, if you let yourself really go through it, you'll meet a version of yourself you've never known. One who doesn't need to be needed to feel whole. One who can love without disappearing. One who knows that being alone doesn't mean being unloved. It means being enough, just as you are, without addition or performance. If this story resonated with you, you are not alone. There are so many of us learning to exist without the roles we hid inside. And maybe that's the most beautiful thing about falling apart. It's proof you're finally letting yourself be real.